Hey, this is Dylan Fry, the real estate guy, here to be your guy for any real estate needs in the Kansas City area. Today we've got Kurt. He's with First Class Property Inspections, and he's going to talk to you about buying homes in the Kansas City area and what you need to look out for. So before we get started, if this is your first time to the channel, make sure you hit that subscribe button and then hit that little bell so you'll get future notifications of our videos. And like I said, today we are going to be going through inspections, why you should get one, what you should be looking for, and how you should gauge an inspector, whether they're actually looking out for your best interest or they're just trying to make the deal go through, because there's two different types out there. Today we've got Kurt on here with First Class Property Inspections. Here to start it off, I'm going to have him introduce himself, tell you a little bit about how he got started in this business, and we'll go from there.
Excellent. Yeah. My name is Kurt Witt with First Class Property Inspections. Like Dylan said, I've been doing this for 20 years. I got into business. I had over 30 years of remodeling, all phases, all aspects. Basically, when I heard about home inspections back in the day, I didn't even know that was a thing. A gentleman by the name of Brian Rollins, we used to go to church together. He told me about it. That's what he did, and I'm like, people pay you for that? I'm like,
it's wild, especially like growing up in a small town like I did. When I bought my first house, I didn't have an inspection.
No, I didn't. Yeah, didn't know anything about it. So I talked to him, and he showed me kind of what detailed and involved. I'm like, I'm in. And ever since then, I worked for another company back in the day, and learned all the ins and outs and the ropes about it, and I took the plunge in 2009 to start my own company, and been going ever since.
Never look back.
Never look back.
No. Well, and with your background, that's one thing I enjoy, is having somebody that has a background in reconditioning homes and making sure that because we run into a lot of flips. And there's situations where flips aren't always the best, and that's one thing I love about you is coming in. So talk to me a little bit about that. When you're going out and looking at a home, what are the biggest things that you check into first?
You know, it's kind of a bottom to top ordeal. In other words, foundations are definitely number one, hands down. I mean, you can have the most incredibly beautiful looking cosmetic house on the market, but if your foundation is shot, who cares?
Yeah.
You can drop thousands and thousands of dollars. Once a foundation has been jeopardized, it can be, so-called repaired. But the initial what am I looking for? Structure itself. Once it's been popped or cracked, that's all you're doing is you're trying to stop it from moving anymore. There's no guarantees on that. The people that are doing the repairs might offer a guarantee, but if it starts to move somewhere else, that's a whole nother issue.
And that's extremely common out here in the Midwest.
It is. I've got actually a buddy of mine right now. He's been in this friend of mine has been in their house for quite some time. Front of their house started to move on them. They had it all peered up and all that stuff. Another 7 years later, the backside did. So the initial fix is that's what's warranted. So if that house starts to move again, that's a whole nother ballgame. You just don't want to get into that situation. So foundation's definitely number one. The second would be the top, the roof. That's probably going to be the most secondary expense that is going to be needed on a house. If you have to replace the whole roof, if it's got multiple layers, if it's got comp over wood, it all has to be torn off. So, you can look, anywhere from $15,000, $20,000+ depending on the square footage of the house. Then it's all of your components, your HVAC systems that can get up, rather costly at times. Plumbing, electrical. If you need a new panel box, if it's outdated or if it's been deemed hazardous, like Federal Pacifics and Sylvanias, those should definitely be replaced. Aluminum wiring is another big hitter. People frown on that. It's been around, as post-war, they start using the copper for bullets, and there's a little period of time when they threw in the aluminum wiring. People don't realize that when you have aluminum mixed with copper, it causes a dialysis, and that's the corrosion process, which then starts the arcing, which then causes a potential fire. The other thing with aluminum wiring is it's undersized. So if your 12-gauge wire on copper is used for outlets and things like that nature, 14 on lights, 14-gauge, the aluminum should be doubled, so it should
correct.
Right, and they never did that. when they installed it. So,
well, and back then they really didn't have, because you see that a lot in the houses that were built post-war. There for a few years, you see a little bit of that aluminum wire, and back then they didn't realize, like, hey, we've got to change it now, because now you see a lot of the power companies are using aluminum wire. But if you look at the aluminum wire that they use as opposed to the copper wire, it's about double, almost triple the size.
Much thicker, multi-strand. It's one thing to have a solid aluminum versus multi-strand. You still have a lot of aluminum coming in, and that's fine. But once you get into the house, and it's usually the biggest issue that I see with it is the copper. When aluminum's tied into an outlet, the outlets and the light switches are always a copper base where it attaches to.
Correct.
And that's where you're going to get the issues.
Yeah.
And then people, the living conditions. So grandma and grandpa might be living in the house with aluminum wiring, and it's fine. The people buying it might have 6 kids with hair dryers and all these other electronics going on. So now you're loading it up. And that can definitely have a major.
Well, and that's something that a lot of people don't realize when they're buying these older houses. Heck, they were running lights off of switches and everything like that. So when you see that stuff, you just expect, like, hey, you're probably going to have to upgrade this at some point in time because of how much power we use.
Right.
I mean,
and I hear that all the time. It's like, well, I've never had a problem with it. It's like, that doesn't mean the next person or the next family that's moving in won't. And just because you haven't had a problem, this, sometimes that could be referred to as a ticking time bomb.
Yeah.
You haven't, but so we got to write that up. We got to report on it. We want people to be safe. My allegiance is to my clients, the people that call me. I inspect every house like my daughter. One of my family members or my daughter or my child is going to buy it. That's just the way, that's just good practice. I mean,
well, and I think it's huge for agents to realize that as well. I think one thing that agents get into is sometimes they count their money before they get to inspections. And
I'll let you talk on that.
and that's just something you can't do and that's why every time one of my buyers asks, I'm like, yes, we need an inspection, and this is the one I want to use because I know you're going to come in there and say, hey, this is everything that's wrong with it. And you can either have a client for a day or a client for life, and I try to have clients for life, and that's a huge part of it.
A lot of my repeat customers are clients I've done in the past or their friends and family. Because of the job I've done for them, and they refer me to their again, friends and family, so it keeps me going real well.
So here's a question is, over the last few years, stuff has been blowing up, and I know that's one thing that kind of got cut out, was people were like, hey, we're just not going to do an inspection. We want this house. So tell me about your opinion on that.
Absolutely not. And unfortunately, it's totally out of my control because it is a seller's market right now. So there's multiple offers, multiple showings, and to sweeten the deal, a lot of people are checkboxing. What is it, 2?
Box 2 or box 3?
Yeah. To waive their inspections, so that way it's more appealing to the seller that, hey, this is something I don't have to worry about no matter what comes up. People are getting into these houses after the deal is done, and they're finding, anywhere from $10, $15, $20 plus $1,000 in repair issues that they had no idea that they saw, see coming.
Yeah, and some of those houses, they put 20, 30, 40,000 over asking, maybe an appraisal waiver in there. So
already, right.
Yeah, and now they have this other issue that is coming up.
Correct.
And I just think it's wild how we got to that point.
One thing I've been starting to promote, and I think it's a really good idea because I understand the market and I understand that people, are desperate to get into these homes and are already willing to pay and are paying over asking price. But one thing I'm offering is a pre-offer inspection. So basically for $150, you find a house you're interested in, call me up, I get out there, I hit the 5 big components, the foundation, the roof, the electrical, the plumbing, and just do a walkthrough. It's a verbal only, just to make sure there's no showstoppers, kind of give them a thumbs up or thumbs down. go. I don't see anything to stop you from going through with this. Afterwards, we can do a complete inspection if you want to, or follow up on something like that with a discounted price because you're a repeat client. But at least just have an idea what you're getting into. A lot of people just don't know. Most people see the cosmetics. They walk in, they see the white and gray kitchen, and then all the little pretty things that are going on. I mean, how many times have we stopped the inspection? Sometimes I don't even make it inside.
Well, and that's the other thing I want to touch on is sometimes we don't make it inside. We get outside, and it's so hard. So you do have those first goggles when you first look at a house. We had a house in a small town up in northern Missouri that we went out there. Me and the buyer walked through this entire house. We were like, "This is awesome. This price point is awesome." And I pointed out a few things. Hey, this is something that I would be concerned about. And then we went back. It was less than a week later for inspections, and we started noticing they had spray foamed a lot of stuff shut. And they're like over the weekend, it's crazy because it seemed like it was over the weekend, and it was all fresh. But I guess it had started to crack, and they had spray foamed it shut. And I know they did it over the weekend because they had spray foamed a door shut that I had removed the couple days prior.
Right. And those are all huge red flags. Spray foam, I rank that up with duct tape and baling wire. I mean, the people just get way crazy with it. I mean, there's proper applications for that stuff to be used, but, sealing cracks and foundations and this and that. No, that's not. Cover-ups, a lot of flip-its. I will say right now, if you buy a flip-it without an inspection, you are just absolutely just taking the biggest chance. There's so many things that go wrong. There's so many people that get into these flip-its that watch one episode of Look What I Can Do, and they can't, and they don't know what they're doing. The plumbing, the electrical, all sorts of things are screwed up on this flip-its. Now, that's not saying that some people don't know what they're doing, so I wouldn't encourage you not to buy or look.
Correct. There is a number of flips out there that are in decent shape. I would say it's more like 80% of the houses we do inspections on are fine.
Yes.
But there is that small 10 to 20% that we go out and look at it, and there's something that I couldn't have noticed otherwise. Right. And I wouldn't have noticed. I mean, we just had one, you were talking about it a minute ago, where the roof was a big deal because they had just shingled over the wood shake shingles.
Right.
So if you don't mind, open up a little bit on what that looks like.
Well, it's just that. You have a wood shingle roof, and to save cost, the homeowner will opt not to have that torn off because once that's torn off, you have to put all new sheathing down and then apply the new composition roof. And so they just go over the top of it. Well, right as soon as they do that, the manufacturer says the warranty's void.
Because it's not installed properly.
Improperly installation. So, strike one right there. Then when the second or the buyer, when the roof does have to be replaced, the entire thing has to be torn off. You can't add another layer, and then you're basically starting from ground zero. You're putting your sheathing on there, and then a new roof on top of that. So it can get.
And now you have now you have, what am I thinking of? Disposal costs.
Oh yeah,
of everything else.
Everything, yeah, all of it goes up because there's more materials you're dealing with, and all this other more labor intensive, and all that. So I see it all the time. I see it way more than I should, but it's
well, and that was a quality house. Like so that's the thing that I think people get confused on is they walk in and they're like, oh, I'm buying this $250,000-$300,000 house, and or even higher than that, and they're like, this is an awesome house. You walk into it, you can tell it looks great, everything looks awesome. But you can't see what you can't see, and you don't know what you don't know.
Right, and the person buying the house, it's they're not going to get up on the roof and start lifting up the shingles and looking and seeing what's going on, getting in the attic. I mean, they're not. That's not the time for them to do any of that, and a lot of people just don't know what they're looking for, and I understand that that's not their field of expertise, and that's why I'm here. Yeah. So, but I want somebody to get a really nice house because a house is probably the biggest investment you're going to make.
It is.
And, you know, and when you find the right one, you want to make sure that the people are getting the right one, that there's not these huge lurking little things, you know, around, you know, hidden that's going to be uncovered, because they will surface. It's just a matter of time. And so you want to know up front what you're up against. And then, you know, when it was a buyer's market, you know, everybody loved it because they you know, we could be used to renegotiate. We found these issues. You know, you can make a list and you know, and kind of go from there. So everybody was on the up and up. You know, I've been called in the industry by certain, you know, agents as being too picky. You know, there's like, well, he's really good, but does he have to find all this, or does he have to? I was like, what do you want me to leave out? I mean, you know, really, what do you want me to leave out of the report? My client and your client at the time should know. I mean, even if it's an outlet that doesn't work, that's where they want to, you know, put something, or, you know, a computer desk or whatever. You know, they should know all the ins and outs.
Well, and I tell everybody that I work with, you need to have an A, B, and a C list.
Correct.
So when we walk into this inspection, A's are we are not moving forward with this deal unless this is repaired. The B's is, it'd be nice if this was repaired, but if it's not, we can make this still work. C is, we don't care about it.
Cosmetics, just little trivial stuff. And that, you know, you've seen my report. So when, you know, my summaries, I put the majors, any major concerns that's going to need a trade skilled person, safety, monetary, things of that nature. You know, that's going to go in a red category. That's something that can get somebody hurt. That's something that's going to be a very high-ticketed item via foundation, via roof, via HVAC system. So that's going to go into red. And I tell my clients, you know, this is what you really want to focus on. And my next category would be more of the honeydew list. So, you know, a toilet that maybe runs, or it needs a new flapper valve, or a new fluid master, or a drippy faucet. Things of that nature.
Correct.
You know, that
not having a trap in the right spot.
Yeah, you know, these are all things you can get to. They're, you know, low cost items, but should be addressed. You know, definitely should be addressed, but it's not urgent. You know, but you know, kind of keep it in that category. So, you know, kind of gives them a rolling list, and it also gives them a detailed, you know, the wife keeps the husband busy on the weekends type thing. So.
Yeah, it definitely gives them something to be busy. So to dive into that, do you rather your clients be there for inspections?
100%. And not only do I encourage them to be there, not all inspectors are like this, but I encourage my clients to follow me around, to ask questions as we go. That way they see what I'm talking about firsthand, so when they do get my report, it all kind of clicks and makes sense. It pops back in their head what I'm talking about. There's no guesswork. One thing I pride myself on is I don't get callbacks. I mean, when I get the report out, I might have somebody call me for a question.
Correct.
But that's it. I don't get, you know, you missed this, or you didn't do this, or it's like, well, you know, you were there. You walked with me. We all saw the same thing.
And if there's there is situations where maybe there's something that they've been thinking about, and since they've seen the house, and they're like, oh, I want to make sure that I ask this question. And when we're walking around the house, that's their time for them to say, hey, does this work?
Right.
And I think it's also good for people, if you're doing an inspection, go to the inspection, because you're going to also get a feel for how the inspector looks at the house.
Absolutely.
Every one of ours is, at the end of it, you say, hey, I would buy this house or I wouldn't. And that,
not always. I don't always try to tread there. I mean, because you know, it's a different animal.
Correct.
But I let them know what kind of a house they're buying.
Yes. You know? Yeah, and it's one of those situations where you can see when there's panic in the inspector's eyes. So when we're looking at that foundation stuff, and we're looking at those big ticket items, and we're like, hey, which helps me, because sometimes you have to save people from themselves.
You do. You got so much emotion going on. You know, the people look at a house, you know, they walk in, they love it to death, and it's in their eyes and their mind, it's their dream house. And here I come, you know, I do my inspection, and I share with them my findings. They might have major foundation issues. It's going to cost literally thousands of dollars, amongst other things as well. And I've literally seen the wife start crying, you know, and just so disappointed. And I'm like, look, you need to stop right here because I just saved you. You're crying. You think you're crying now? No. If you move forward on this, it's going to be a nightmare. I mean,
correct.
What's that movie called? The Money Pit or Money Trap or whatever.
Yes.
And they're out there. I mean, that's one of the reasons I very, very rarely look at sellers' disclosures because everybody's honest. Everybody's, and a lot of people don't know what they're looking at, or
Well, and sometimes people are like, "Yeah, I think it's this.
Right.
Yeah, I think it's this." I seen on a seller's disclosure we had the other day that it told me the AC unit was 32 years old. Mm-hmm. I went down there and looked at the AC or the furnace unit, and it right next to the furnace it says install date 2014.
2014.
And it's clear as day, and I'm
right.
like, they didn't even come look at it. Right. And it's like they just assumed that it was the same age as the house.
They do. And homeowners, they don't know how to read cracks in foundations. And just because you have crack or some cracks in the foundation, that's not, that's by no means the end of the world. Cracks mean everything. You have to know what a house will talk to you. It will kind of tell you what it's doing. Step back. I should have named my company the House Whisperer, but you step back and you look at it and you kind of see what's going on. I mean, I've walked up to houses sitting on the sidewalk looking at them and literally seeing a 2-inch drop on one side because it's just, the foundation has failed and it definitely needs peering and all sorts of stuff.
Well, and people don't realize what all goes into that. The general public doesn't realize what all goes into that foundation falling because I had a house to where I was out and I looked through it one day, and then I went back to do an open house for the guy that was selling it, and I called him as soon as I got there, and I was like, hey, you might want to get out here. And we look at it, and in the bedroom that was closest to the garage, there is a split that goes from a 1/4 inch there at the bottom all the way to about a 2-inch gap at the top, and you can see daylight through it.
Well, yeah, obviously a problem.
Correct. Obviously a problem. But it came down to the garage was improperly installed.
Yep.
And it was tied to the house. Yep. And the corner of the garage fell over the weekend.
Yep.
And it put too much stress on the house, and it just ripped it in half.
Yeah.
And
we see that quite a bit. I mean, a lot of things we see is additions not properly put on, permits not properly pulled. And, and like you said, it starts to drop, it starts to split away from the house, and now there's a whole series of issues that need to be addressed on top of that. It's not a matter of just peering the foundation. Now it's fixing the siding, fixing the roof that might have got
correct
pulled away as well.
And so it's just dollar after dollar.
It is, and it's a step effect. What goes on in the basement will stem through the house. It's just, it's just how much and how drastic you're going to see it.
Yeah, and I know that's a big thing when people are building their houses or doing foundations is they're running into so many costs as they're doing that. They think, oh, well, if I just cut some costs here with like either a structural engineer, they don't want to use one of those to say, hey, will this actually support this or not?
Right.
Or in bigger deals, architects, different stuff like that to make sure that it is structurally sound. Mm-hmm. And then they get into it and they've done the work. And now they're selling it, or it's 5 years later, and they're like, oh, no, we've got cracks up the side of the house. We've got this different stuff. The foundation's falling. Maybe they didn't get the footers low enough. You do see those type of things as well.
Quite a bit. And, the other thing I see out there is when they dig the hole, right before they pour the foundation, they dig the hole too deep. And now, when they backfill and all that, you still have poor grade or negative grade, and that is huge on a foundation. You're going to have water coming back towards it. Water has no mercy on the walls. That's what starts the cracking, the bowing, the pushing.
I feel like that's on every inspection, almost in Missouri.
Well, grading, and that, again, that's typical. On new constructions, your house is the grading is going to start settling really quick because when they dig that foundation and they backfill that dirt, they're not going to stomp it down because that concrete's still so green. So they're going to try to overemphasize it as much as possible and let it naturally come down and settle. But you're going to get general settlement around your house for the first 5, 6, 7, even 8 years. So when I tell people when they on a new construction or newer construction, 2, 3, 4-year-old house, be mindful when you're mowing the grass. When you start to see that, your elevation, even level, because you want it flowing away. Just bring in dirt. Dirt's cheap, and $200.
It's a lot cheaper than a foundation.
$200 in dirt will save you $20,000 in foundation issues.
Yeah,
and just by adding some dirt.
Yeah, another thing that I heard from a structural engineer is he's like, hey, when it gets really dry out, you got to water that foundation.
Water your foundation. You get the soaker hoses, put it around 30 inches around, turn it on, keep that moist. If you're going to use ground foliage or ground covering or do any kind of landscaping, a real good weed barrier, a heavy mat weed barrier, and that's going to keep that ground moist as well when you put your rock and stuff. I don't recommend wood chips, your kind of termite food, but they do make a real nice rubberized mulch. It's constant reconstituted tires, and it's a great product. In the last years, it doesn't decompose.
That's awesome. And do you see that quite a bit with termite damage when people bring that type of stuff? Because people don't really think about it. They're bringing mulch in. They're making this house look really nice, and then now they've brought all these extra things. I know railroad ties was a big thing there for a while.
Landscape timbers, all that stuff. You're just putting food on the ground for the termites to surf it. That doesn't mean it's necessarily going to start getting into your house, but you're getting them awfully close. And when we do termite inspections, if it's 30 feet around that property, I have to write it up. So if you've got a tree stump that's 15, 20 feet outside and it's got termites, I recommend treatment because you've got them there. And that's just protocol.
Yeah, and it's only a matter of time before
they find their way there.
Correct. Yep. Correct. So what are some preventative measures that people can? Because I know one thing that is huge is either wood siding or all that, and different ways for termites to get in. How do they prevent those termites from getting in?
Keep your house well sealed, caulked, and all that stuff. Again, keep the wood and anything. Landscape timbers away from the house. Just an annual or biannual bug pest control company coming out. They can do, inspections for termites and also treat for other little critters, spiders and stuff like that. And at the same time, look for the termites. But just be consciously aware when you're walking around, looking. If you don't know what a termite tube looks like, definitely, Google it, pull it up, kind of get an idea what you're looking for because you'll see them, and once you see them, you got them. The reason you want to have annual termite inspections because, if I come out and do a house and there's no signs of termites and I leave and 1 month later they show up, okay, and nobody catches it, well, next year if you have another termite inspection done, there's not enough time for them to actually cause much damage. I mean, they haven't got rooted in there. The colony hasn't just taken off. Correct. But you let it go 3, 4, 5, 6 years, they're eating your house. And I've done a house in Staley Farms. It was 9 years. It was almost a new house. And obviously no termites, like 3 years old house when I did it 9 years ago. A guy called me up after 9 years of the inspection and said, hey, Kurt, I said, I think I got some termite issue. His house was chewed up. And I said, well, when's the last time you had an inspection done? When you did it. Like, no, buddy. You got to be proactive. If you're going to own a house, you're going to have maintenance. There's just no ifs, ands, and buts about it. And the idea of a person thinking that there's such thing as a perfect house, it's built by imperfect people.
Well, and I think
that doesn't exist.
I think a lot of that comes into it's just like your body. Whatever if you're going to take preventative care, then it's going to
last a lot longer.
Last a lot longer.
Yep.
And that's one thing that about home ownership that I don't know that everyone gets is that when you move into that thing, it's not just, hey, this house is awesome.
Right.
There's nothing involved in it.
No.
It is, hey, this is regardless of whether it's in great shape, there's still going to be a decent amount of money that needs to be spent on this, and we have to take care of it. Otherwise, it is the biggest investment that people make. Mm-hmm. It's an asset. Mm-hmm. You don't want a depreciating asset.
Correct. And if you let it go, once you start letting something go, it goes faster and faster and faster.
Correct.
It starts to deteriorate, a little wood rot here, but next thing you know, it's spreading like wildfire. And touch base on stuff that's older, like older appliances, older HVAC. Just because it's older doesn't mean it's not working fine. It doesn't mean it's not just purring like a kitten and doing its thing. And, I tell people, if it's not broke and it's been maintained, there's no reason to, maybe set some money aside for, and plan on a replacement in the future. But there is such a thing as planned obsolescence. And that's something I wanted to touch base on that people don't realize.
Yeah.
That this new stuff that's the last 10 years, it's literally built from the manufacturer with planned obsolescence. It's going to go bad, and they plan it that way because if they made something to last forever, well, you'd never rebuy it.
Well, I know that was a big thing back in the day, is they kind of had a meeting and said, "Hey, and this is going down the conspiracy series."
Well, it's a fact. It's not a conspiracy theory at all. I mean, it's a fact. Think about those refrigerators you see up on the third level, that the big arched ones that are just, and it's just purring like a kitten, and they're 45 years old.
Yeah.
Now show me a new refrigerator that's going to last you 45 years.
Show me one that's going to last you 5. And it's a different world now.
It's a different world.
And which is smart from the manufacturer's point.
It is.
They're getting people to come back to them.
I know, it is, but, man, I don't know. That's greed. That's greed at the highest form. I mean, I get it, but I don't know where the line is on that.
Well, and I think that if you take care of stuff, then sometimes it'll be good. But I know I've seen roofs that are 3 years old that look like they're 30. And I've seen other roofs that are 20 years old that look like
really
they're
great.
5.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things where you never really know. It could be every house in the neighborhood has been hit by hail really hard, and yours is the only one that hasn't, That's
mine.
Which does happen. Like, that was one of the
does.
craziest things when I was in insurance is they'd be like, my neighbor and the other neighbor got new roofs. Why ain't I getting a new roof? Because you don't have any hail damage.
You don't have any hail damage, right. And it also depends on the condition of the roof. People don't realize this, too. A newer roof, one that's 1, 2, maybe 3 years old, is more vulnerable to hail damage because it's pliable, it's softer, it's more, to be impacted and dented. You get a roof, an architectural roof or composition roof that's 7, 8, 9 years old. It's stiffened up. It's not to the point of it's brittle or needs replaced, but it's a much stiffer shingle, and it's going to take more of an impact and have that bounce off. So there's so many factors that's involved with that. The location of your house, which way it's facing, if there's a lot of shade. I mean,
there's a lot that goes into all that
stuff. A lot to it. Yeah. So every situation, every house is different. I guess that's why I love this job, because every day is a new day. It's kind of an adventure.
You get to go see a blank canvas every single day.
Every single day.
That is something that I love. A lot of agents don't love inspection day. They're like, this is terrible. But I get excited about it. I'm like, this is where we make or break the deal a lot of times.
And it is very true. And as well as I do, like with you, I try to encourage my agents themselves to follow me along, so that way when they're showing homes, some things they're not inspectors, and I don't want them to ever take that role. But if they see a foundation that's bowing in 3-4 inches, they can definitely tell the client, hey, this is something we probably should have looked at, or look a little further into it, and they catch it up.
Well, and we prep it, because even at that, if I just say, hey, I'm not an inspector, like, oh, yeah, I don't know anything about this, we'll get an inspector in here if you like the house or whatever. If I treat every client like that, one, I'm not going to have very many clients, and two, I'm going to have some mad ones because they're going to spend a lot on inspections.
Right. And you could see it up front, and and they might even steer like, hey, look, based on what you're showing me and all this, I'm not interested.
Yeah.
And move on.
And it makes for a better brand and a better retention of your clients, because you're taking good care of them. I absolutely love when you say, hey, and now I say I absolutely love it, but when we're looking at a house and you're like, this house is terrible, I would not make this investment. It's an awful house, because now I know they trust me.
I don't say that.
Okay, I'm jumping to the essentially
what you're hearing
through the implications is, hey, this house is terrible.
Well, and that's what people have to understand. They really do. When people, a lot of times I get hit up with, did it pass? And I'm like, this is not a pass-fail grade. Okay?
Yeah, correct.
It's a list of conditions. And then once this list is made up, you go through them, and so you can, with a sound, decision, make up your mind if there's something you still want to move forward on, if it's something that you're still interested in, you know, and if you want to tackle it or not. And so that's basically all it is a list of conditions. And now some of these lists get rather lengthy. And, you know, we're, like I said, you know, maybe halfway through, everybody, including the agents, are like, no.
Well, and it's one of those things where you gotta gauge people, because I will tell people, like, no, you need to walk away from this investment. And a lot of that comes from the things that you've pointed out. And, like, we're not giving estimates, but essentially we know what the market costs. And what the market's going to dictate if we have a foundation repair. Oh, this is going to be $15,000 to $30,000.
Right.
And when you start saying those type of things to people and say, "Hey, this is going to be a $15,000 to $30,000. You need somebody out here to look at this. Here we go. We're looking at this." And as those things add up, you're like, "Hey, do you really want to move forward with this?"
Now you just price yourself out of the appraisal market in that area, you know.
Correct. And it's one of those situations, as then it is my job as the realtor to say, hey, this is a bad investment. And that's where I'm saying I love the honesty about it. About, hey, this is...
You have to be honest. And I wish there was more and more agents like you. And unfortunately, as much as I hate to say this, there is agents out there that really their focus and primary is their commission check. I mean, I hate to say it, but that's what they want. And you know, I've had agents come back on me and like, you know, you blew the deal up. I was like, I didn't blow anything up. The house speaks for itself. Okay?
Correct.
And a lot of times it's kind of interesting because I'll have agents that think I'm too picky and stuff. But when do I hear from them? When their friends or family or themselves are buying a house. And now they want to know what's going on.
Well, they want somebody that's picky.
Yeah, now they want to know, I want you to find everything you can. It's like, well, then you should treat every client the same way.
Correct.
That you want to be treated. What's that, the golden rule? So, you know, that's what people should live by. And that's kind of what I do. It's like I have to go home and sleep at night. I have to give, you know, I want to do the best job I can for my client so they know what they're getting into. And and at the end of the day, at the end of the inspection, if everybody can live with the conditions that I wrote up, super, move forward.
Well, and again, we're talking about the worst case scenarios.
Yes.
And 90% of 90% of the houses come back on it with a clean report.
And you know as well as I do, when I'm on an inspection, Dylan, I don't just talk about the bad stuff. I mean, when I see, because I've had 30 years of remodeling and construction background, I'm like, I will talk this house up. I mean, if it's built right and it's done right and the craftsmanship is like, wow, this is a nice house. I mean, you know.
Well, and that goes back to that one with the roofing issue. Yeah. It was a nice house. And
yeah.
it was, that deal didn't get blown up because of it. It wasn't a situation where they were super concerned about it. It was a situation where it is nice to have that known for the client. Say, hey, this is going to be a cost that you're going to have to incur.
Yes. And it's because somebody puts, again, let's backtrack. It's because somebody puts comp over wood. And if it's just freshly been done, if it's only 3, 4, maybe years old, okay, you got life on it. I mean, it's nothing that has to be done or replaced anytime soon, but just know that when it does have to replace, there's going to be that additional cost.
There's the warranty issue and the other stuff.
Even like on and I tell people too, if the house is just nice, the foundation's solid and everything's great, but your roof has some issues, or maybe you need a new roof. I tell people it's like, look, you found yourself a really nice car. This thing is everything. It's got low mileage. It's a clean bill of health, but you need new tires. Are you not going to buy this car because you need new tires? That, you got to look at it that way.
Correct. And I get asked all the time this question, and a lot of times it comes from more experienced buyers. They're like, is there really a reason to have an inspection? Like, should I pay for that? Or because most of these inspectors work with them talking. They're like, most of these inspectors work with agents, so they're not really trying to kill deals either. And I'm like, I mean, I don't think they're trying to kill deals, but the guy I use is extremely honest, and he's going to pick apart a house.
If you go on my Google reviews and read those and see what the clients say about
and I think that is the biggest thing is it sometimes it sucks. They got to pay for an inspection, and it does.
And when they say pay for an inspection, and that's something that always gets me. It's like, our basic basic whole house inspection starts at $350, and then it goes up from there.
Minimal costs.
Minimal. If I find one thing, if the water heater shot, there's $1,000 right off the top, just a water heater. If you need a new HVAC system, $5,500. So without versus not knowing that, you find out after you sign the papers and stuff when it could be possibly negotiated with the deal. I mean, it's actually saving you money on an average transaction. I saved an average person about $6,300 for a minimum cost of the inspection because of the things I find. If you need a new roof, you need this, you have some foundation issues, and that way, then you can go back and address it and get it hashed out. That's what I don't get involved with that. That's why you guys earn all that money. So, but
well, and it comes down to a point of you have to know what your clients want, and I'm big for advocating for the clients. I'll do whatever you want me to. At the end of the day, it is their decision.
Right.
I'm going to give you my opinion.
Right.
But at the end of the day, it's your decision because at the end of the day, the people buying the properties have to make that mortgage check every single month. They're going to be the ones that have to do those repairs. So, where we're talking about foundation issues, different stuff that you see in houses, I have clients that I know will walk into those houses and say, nah, that doesn't scare me. That doesn't bother me.
Yeah.
I'm not worried about it. I just want and some people just want the inspection report for essentially their honey-do list. And that's all they need it for is like, hey, this is just for a clarification so that I know what needs done in the future, or I can hand it off to my guy if they're doing flips or anything like that and say these things need repaired.
And every aspect is different. If it's a first-time home buyers, the husband, wife are working an office situation, he doesn't even own a bag of tools, and the house has just got endless issues. It's like, buddy, you really need to rethink this.
It's one of those situations where you got to know your clients.
Versus it's an investor. He's got a crew of people that can come in and knock stuff out. Different animal. Another high ticket item can be a chimney. The crown, the brick, the spalding of the chimney, the firebox. It's extremely important if you're planning on using the fireplace or wood burning fireplace. You definitely want to make sure that's in working condition because that obviously can start a huge, be a big issue down the road.
Yeah, and you have it inspected to where you know whether it's had a fire in it before. Because
the liner, make sure it's not all, warped and starting to rust, or the tiles are cracked and stuff like that. Make sure the crown's on properly and the brick's not popping off and the mortar gaps and all that. So that can get costly as well. Chimney can be a big hitter.
Real quick, what's your biggest thing that you've walked into or what's one of the craziest things you've walked into on an inspection?
It's probably been 10 years or so ago. I walked into a house down in Midtown, and I kid you not, I see bowing walls all the time, cracked walls, angle cuts, horizontal cracks, angle cracks. But this particular wall, the front of the house wall had a horizontal crack in the all the way across the whole front and bowed in close to 2 feet. To the point when I went down there, and we all went down there, and I looked at this wall, and I'm like, I don't feel comfortable talking down here. Let's go outside. The seller was a property owner. He had other rental properties, and that's what this particular one was. And he happened to be there, and I brought it up, and he's literally rolled his eyes. He's like, "Oh, that's no big deal. I can have that fixed for a couple $100." I'm like,
I don't know.
No, dude. And people have to know, and they have to be able to gauge. Once a wall hits 3 inches, ideally, that wall should be excavated and either pulled back or replaced, okay? And people just don't do that. They don't want to spend the money. So I'll see 6, 7, 8-inch bowed walls, and they'll put the shoring up there and slap in the mortar behind it and call it good. And even if it's been braced, is it been done properly, or did Billy Bob, do it himself with his friends over a weekend while they're drinking their beer? And I see it all the time. It's like, just because the bracing's there, where's the documentation? Where's the warranty to this and all that other stuff?
If you don't have one,
make sure you get somebody to look at it, that it was done properly, because it's all the time. probably one of the biggest things I write up is DIYs. Personally, they think they can do something, and they just can't.
Well, and there is a reason why tradespeople get paid the way they do.
True.
We'll leave it at that. Yeah. Real quick, I really appreciate you coming out here.
Absolutely.
But before we hop off here, why should somebody use you? Give me your elevator pitch.
I guess my elevator pitch, because I've been doing this for 20 years, and I literally absolutely love what I do. I love helping people out, so they're not getting themselves into a mess, that they know up front, the conditions of the home, and then they can make up with the sound, mind and conclusion if they can, want to move forward or not on it.
Yeah.
And just literally helping a person out. This is their biggest investment, and just making sure that it's gonna be a perfect fit for them. That there's not going to be any huge, aftershocks coming after, at them after they sign that. Because I tell people, once you sign that line, it's yours.
Yep.
And everything that comes with it. So why not? And one of my spills is, the more you know about a house before you get into it, the better off you are. And what I mean by that, the whole house, the termite, the sewer scopes, the radon, because if you don't address it then, there's a real good chance you're going to sell that house down the road, whether it be 4, 5, 6, 7 years, whenever.
Correct.
But you're going to, something's going to happen in your life. You're going to have to do, and it's all going to come back up again. If whether you had addressed it or not. If you've addressed it, you can lay down the documentation that it's been dealt with. But if you haven't, all this stuff's coming back up again, and now you're dealing with it when you're selling it.
Now you're negotiating.
Yes.
With the buyer that's coming in
but
that wants that stuff.
I love what I do. I really love what I do. I think you've been with me. I think it shows.
It does show. It shows a lot, and it shows to the clients as well. I get good reviews every single time I bring you out for an inspection, or the clients bring you out for an inspection. We can only offer our opinion,
and that's all these are. It's an unbiased opinion,
yeah.
And that's one of the reasons. Like I said, I like people to follow me around. So I'm not just saying it. They're not. I'm showing them, and I'm explaining to them. At the same time,
and they're not just seeing a picture and a statement on a report.
Like, what? They actually see what I'm talking about.
Correct. I think that is huge. So, how does somebody get a hold of you if they're interested in
my website at firstclasspropertyinspections.com. You can call my office number at 816. I hope you edit this.
Yeah, you're good.
I don't have my card with me. It's usually call Lisa.
No, you're good.
You got my card?
I can't remember the number. That's all right. So if you're looking to get a inspection with Kurt, look him up at firstclasspropertyinspections.com, and you'll be able to find the number on there. Give him a shout, get it scheduled. He'll come out, take a look through it, have your agent look into it as well. If you have an agent and they don't know an inspector, or they don't refer you to one, give them his name, because he's going to be able to help them out and help further their career as well, just by taking care of their customers. I appreciate everybody watching this video. It's been a great time with Kurt. Hopefully there's some takeaways that everybody's going to have from this as they're making that move to the Kansas City area, so that they're aware of the different things that could pop up on inspections, and why you should have an inspection, and why you want to know what you're getting into before you get into it. If this is your first time to the channel, again, I'm Dylan Fry, the real estate guy. I'm a licensed realtor in the state of Missouri. I help you out with your move, sell, anything in the Missouri area. And if this is your first time to the channel, make sure that you hit that follow button. Then also subscribe to the channel. And if you like this video, then make sure you hit that like button, and then hit that little bell so you'll get future notifications of our interviews, so that you'll get everything you need to make your move to the Kansas City area. Thank you.